All right, welcome into Starting Nine. Here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. I'm the only one here with you. Well, that's not really true. I got Manny Chang. He's our producer today. He'll be trying to put up some of your comments as we go forward. Before we go any further, I do want to tell you about a couple sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network and of this particular program. It's Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. We've got lots of things coming for the college basketball NCAA tournament. University of Miami gets a 5 seed. That's pretty damn cool. Check it out. Go to Prize Picks. Use the code 5. Get that initial deposit match up to $100. Again, you can download it from prizepicks.com, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. You can play different sports together. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Flex play, power play. It's really easy to figure out. Just put down the full 100. You'll get $100 to play. There are no rollovers. Again, use that code 5. We're also sponsored by friend Danny over at All Pro Construction Builders. They're actually in the Keys right now, getting everybody ready for the Hurricanes because we know they come there. Not the Hurricanes that play in Miami, the Hurricanes that destroy everything around here. And so you should get your Hurricane shutters. Get them done now. Not just shutters. I'm sorry, not shutters. You shouldn't get shutters. You should get windows. Windows are better than shutters, right? They'll protect your house better, and these guys will do it for you. Mention 5 Reasons when you go to All Pro Construction Builders, and you get 10% off your entire order. You can check them out on Instagram. The website will be up soon. Again, really good people. They use American products, locally made products, and they are fully certified, licensed, and all that good stuff. So go to All Pro Construction Builders. Reach out to Danny. Again, you can check out the phone number there. On IG, it's 305-484-4429. 305-484-4429. It says they service Dade and Monroe counties, but they also service Broward as well. All right, let's get to it. Big day here for the Miami Dolphins. Not so much for the Miami Heat. And so we're going to discuss this. We do this a lot on this show. You know, I host 5 on the Floor, and if you want to hear me just go off on the Heat, you can listen to 5 on the Floor from last night, or you can watch it here on this channel. It's going to be up here soon. Greg and I got into the Jimmy Butler situation, and I cursed a lot because I'm very frustrated watching this team. I'm frustrated by the way this season has gone. I'm frustrated by them basically going nowhere. And mostly I'm frustrated that they're wasting a terrific Jimmy Butler season. This is the best season that Jimmy Butler's had since he's been in Miami, if you look at the efficiency metrics, and they're doing nothing with it. And the other night against Orlando, Saturday night, was a perfect example of this. You come back from a good win against Cleveland. We had to come back to win that game. And then against Orlando, he saves you. There's a blitz at the end of the game where he appears to get fouled on a 3, gets overturned. But Spoelstra manages to overturn that, at least to the degree of Miami getting the ball back. Jimmy then hits a 3, send the game to overtime, and then everybody forgets he exists. And they lose by 13. And I'm going to the Heat game tonight against Utah, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want to. Like, I am for work. But what am I going to see? It's just been an incredibly frustrating experience watching the Heat this year. I did not think they would be at the stage where it's so much Jimmy's team again. Not after they paid Bam, not after they paid Tyler. There needs to be more from some of the other guys. And I don't care how difficult he is. I know he is. But he's performing to the level of his contract. The others need to do the same. And I talk about that to start here because it's what the Heat have done this season, or what they did last offseason, is so much in contrast. This comes in from Aaron Andrews. We will get your comments on this. Chris Greer, the new godfather of Miami, is so much in contrast to what the Dolphins have done. And we need to hit the brakes here a little bit. The Dolphins still have not won a playoff game since December 30th, 2000. So for all of this has been a lot of, sound and fury, but so far in terms of results, it's signified nothing. Now, I will say that the Dolphins caught a lot of bad breaks last season. They were 8-3. They lost their quarterback. Their quarterback matters no matter what the national media thinks. Their quarterback is really good no matter what the national media thinks. He was top 5 MVP candidate when he was healthy this season. But the reality is, it was another season that ended without a playoff victory. Yes, they were close in Buffalo. Yes, they'd probably win that game if they don't have to play a 7th-round rookie quarterback. But they didn't win it. And the Heat, I think, have won 27 playoff series. which is the apples to apples comparison since the Dolphins have won a playoff game. So I am not going to sit here and say the Dolphins have passed the Heat in terms of being the class organization in this town. They have many, many years to go to do that. But I will say this. They're interesting right now, the Heat are not. Just that simple. They're interesting. They're trying to make themselves interesting. They won last offseason with the Tyreek Hill trade. And by the way, it was a damn good trade, right? Like, there were some questions at the time. Did they give up too much? Was he a product of Mahomes? No. Mahomes and Hill just happen to be the two best guys, or at least Mahomes is the best and Hill is top 5 at their particular positions, who happen to be playing together for a number of years. But they were not worse when separated. In some ways, they were both better. They made adjustments. So that trade worked for the Miami Dolphins. And so as you look at this offseason, okay, what are they doing? Well, the first thing they're doing is they're proving that cap space doesn't mean a damn thing. We talk about that all the time. It doesn't mean that you don't have to have a guy who's good at manipulating it, and they do in Brandon Shore, who has kind of elevated himself to Andy Ellisberg status now. But what they showed first thing was they could redo these contracts and essentially go into free agency and the trade market in very good position. And then after they did that, they went out and got a guy who, and this is fascinating to me because it happens every single time. If Jalen Ramsey was traded to the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Jets or the New York Giants, okay, one of these teams that ESPN obsesses over, the New England Patriots, we would be hearing about how this is the heist of the century, wouldn't we? But because he went to Miami, it's the same thing that happened with Jimmy, right? And many other guys. And Tyreek, because he went to Miami, what are we hearing? He's not really a number one corner anymore. He might need to move to safety at some point. Right? Wasn't that predictable? But you don't buy that, do you? You think Jalen Ramsey can still play? I do. Is he elite among elite? We'll see. But he's still pretty damn good. And showing a couple of clips of Josh Allen beating him or whatever, every corner gets beat. It's the nature of the position, particularly when you're going against the number one guy. And that is the big benefit to this move, is that I'm not sure the Dolphins have a number one corner going into the Jalen Ramsey trade, because Xavier Howard did not play like a number one corner last year. You can blame injuries or whatever. When you're giving up a 140 passer rating, you're not a number one corner anymore. But if you bring in another guy who's a borderline number one corner, things look a little different, because Xavier Howard looked a lot different with Byron Jones. Whatever criticisms of Byron Jones for not wanting to play last season, he looked a lot different with Byron Jones on the other side, right? Because teams weren't throwing at Jones that much, and they started throwing at Howard a little bit, and he started picking off a lot of passes. So now you have two guys who are looking to prove themselves, who have been number one corners at times. Both have been top 5 corners in the entire NFL, and they're going to be playing together. And they're going to be going in practice against Hill and Waddle. You can make an argument that the best show in this town coming up over the next few months is not going to be anything that's played on a Sunday or even on a Friday night in Miami or anything. It's going to be training camp for the Miami Dolphins. That is going to be much must-see viewing. And so right now you have this dichotomy here where you have one team in the Miami Heat that looks stale as hell. They didn't do anything last offseason except bring Caleb Martin back, which was a good move, but that's pretty much all they've done. They brought in Kevin Love as a buyout, and I'm ready to declare that a bust. And I told everybody beforehand, you cannot count on buyout guys. There is a reason that guys get bought out. I'm not saying that Love is a Bibby, in other words, Mike Bibby, class bust at this stage, but he's not giving you anything. He's shooting under 35% from 3, well under 35% from 3. His numbers with Bam are awful. He can't defend. It's everything that Cleveland writers and Cleveland fans said before he took the buyout. It's the reason he couldn't get back in the rotation against Dean Wade. D Wade, except not the other D Wade. And that's it. That's what the Heat have given you this season. They've given you Kevin Love and Cody Zeller, who's been fine. off a buyout. And what are the Dolphins doing? Different sport. I understand. Cap easier to manipulate, all that stuff, more players, more options. But let's look at what the Dolphins have done. First thing, they went out and got the number one defensive coordinator candidate on the market. They paid for it, right? They brought in a guy who has been a head coach to run their defense. They restructured all the contracts they needed to restructure. Now they brought in Jalen Ramsey. And they're not done. According to Barry Jackson and others, they've got about $20 million left to play around with. Let's see what they do with it. But they are making the splash moves. The Heat are not. And again, it's one thing to win the offseason, and it's another to win the real season. But at least the Dolphins are making you care about what they're going to do going forward. We're used to the Heat doing that. If you look at the way that the Dolphins are conducting business, they are finally, after 25 years, and I used to write columns about this all the time, they are finally following the Heat model. They're swinging big. They're putting themselves in position to swing big. They're doing the kind of things that the Heat did in 2008, 2009, into 2010, where they were like, okay, we have Dwayne Wade and Michael Beasley and Udonis Haslem, but it's not enough. We're going to swing big. We're not necessarily going to sign a free agent who's going to push us past the 2010 cap. Yes, they looked at Lamar Odom. Yes, they tried to bring him in. But for the most part, this was the second time, by the way. But for the most part, they kept the cap clear. They had a plan. They swung big. They executed. The Dolphins are swinging big. They're putting themselves in position to do this. Every time the Dolphin fans freak out about them not getting this guy or not getting that guy, I'm like, at this point now, I'm not saying what I used to say, which is, yeah, the Dolphins are asleep at the switch. No, I'm saying, no, they must be setting up for something bigger. That's what we used to say about the Heat. They're setting up for something bigger. And I know that now we're at the stage with the Heat where it's getting Danny Ainge-like. And I don't mean the good way. I don't mean the Danny Ainge accumulating all these draft picks and putting Utah in position to succeed for many years. I'm talking about the Danny Ainge in Boston, where we used to hear all the time, right? We used to hear all the time they were so close to this trade, but they didn't get it done. This would always come out in the media afterwards, right? So what happens? Durant's traded to Phoenix, and all of a sudden on Le Batard's show, you're hearing, and we know where that's coming from. I love Dan. We all know who he speaks to. It's coming out afterwards. They were second on Durant. So this town is starting to change a little bit. The Dolphins have to finalize this by winning games. But we go into this, and look at the programming we've got on our channel today. This is a good way for me to promote it. Louis Sung premiering Fins Nation. And my apologies to my guys, my Chris Joseph and others who started that name. I got to talk to Louis about that. We may change that to Dolphins at Dawn or something like that. But anyway, he's going to be going 5 days a week now with the Dolphins. We got Alex Dono Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He's going to be talking Dolphins this week. I'm on an island on here talking about the Heat because nobody wants to talk about this team right now. That's how things are starting to change. I also recommend you check out the new episodes of the Defo Show. He's doing special 15-minute shows with Mike Lubitz that are South Florida related. They're on the channel here in the morning. You should be subscribed to this channel. You should like this channel. We're doing more local content than anyone else. You know how the local radio stations are going now. With all due respect to the great hosts that are still on them, you're not getting the content there anymore, so we're going to be providing it here. All right, so just setting you up for the day here. Thanks to Manny Chang for producing, but this is where I'm at right now, all right? The Heat have to make us care again. And with, a dozen games left in the season and a play-in almost certain, because you look at the Nets winning games in Minnesota and Denver that they were not supposed to win on this road trip, you need a historic run out of a play-in spot for the Heat to make this season matter. And I don't see it happening. Enjoy Jalen Ramsey, everybody. Thanks to Matty Chang. Prize Picks, use the code 5. All Pro Construction Builders get those hurricane windows. Have a good day, everybody.